Okay, good morning and happy Friday, everyone. I hope everyone is having a really good day. I don't know where you're at, but the heat has been staggering here. So, if you guys have a few minutes, I want you guys to share this out because I have someone very, very special on the show today. Doug Wing. He is he's retired now, but was the vice president and co-chairman of Little Giant Ladders. And I'm going to tell you something. His story and the legacy of in the history that he's been entitled to have the experience to share with us. I am just so excited. So, Doug, welcome.
Hey, good morning, Patricia. Glad to be here. It's exciting to be on your show. This is cool.
Yeah, yeah. So, who is Doug Wing? I mean, you have so many different perspectives. I've gotten to listen to several of your interviews that you've done and just yours and several stories. I mean, you have so many powerful stories. And I want to make sure that before we finish this broadcast too, that I know you have a book coming out. And so we went that website so everybody can have access to that, because my whole goal and mission is to expose people to wonderful people and let them know that there's good in humanity. And I know your faith is also very important to you. And I would like you to touch on that too, if you feel so called to share.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, I've had a great life. I was born in Germany. My parents met when my dad was in the military, and my mom was from Germany. It's kind of funny because she couldn't speak any English, and he didn't really know any German. And her father warned her, don't ever bring home an American, and don't bring home a Catholic. And so, my dad had seen my mom. She worked in this office in this town, and so he was doing military things there, I guess business there, and he saw her and he found out where she lived, and he showed up at her house, and she slammed the door in his face. And my grandpa was like, who was that? He said, nobody. So anyway, my dad was very persistent, and as you'll find out in this interview, that he never gave up. And so he just kept pursuing my mom, and trying to get her to go out with him. And anyway, they went out, and somehow they were able to communicate. My mom goes, what religion are you? And he goes, well, I'm a Mormon. And in her mind, she said, that has to be worse than a Catholic. So anyway, but my grandpa liked my dad, and everything worked out. But so I was born, in Germany, and then we moved back. I mean, when I was a baby, and my dad was from Utah, a little town called Springville, and that's where I was born. That's where I grew up and was raised right there, and I had a pretty good life. I mean, obviously, a small town, and but my dad started Little Giant in 1972, and so my brother and I, we were 10 and 12, and we ended up working there for over 40 years, both of us. And boy, I'll tell you what, you learn a lot about family, and you learn a lot about business when you work together. And it's not always easy, but it was a good experience, and I learned a lot, and it was good, very good.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, how did you learn to navigate with that? Because I know a lot of people, when you mix the family component to business, just the family component alone has its challenges, right? And then you add that business acumen to it. How did you find that? What was your coping mechanisms, or how did you grow with that and still
Yeah.
maintain a balanced life outside of the business?
That's a great question because you're around your family like every day, and it's a lot different, than working just with other people. Well, you have to learn very quickly that not everybody can be the boss. Not everybody's going to have the same position. Not everybody's going to make the same amount of money, because there's different positions and different levels in the company, and so you kind of have to separate the two. You really have to separate the family side and the business side, or else you're not going to be. It's going to be difficult, maybe impossible, to work with family. And a few of my siblings, they couldn't do it, and so they left and worked other places. And so you just have to really separate the two and say, okay, this is not family. This is even though it is a family business, it's a company.
Mhm.
We have to run it like a company, and we can't put the family dynamics in there, and it's difficult. I mean, but I was able to to figure it out, and lasted as long as I did. So
Right.
yeah.
So I know your dad had an incredible work ethic and incredible drive. So having two of his sons as part of that legacy, what was that like as a kid when you started out having your father at the helm and then just growing through? Where did he have you guys start when the company, when you were able to actually work at the company?
Yeah, my brother always jokes and says that, my dad, like today, my dad would be in trouble because we were like underage kids, right? And it was like breaking child labor laws. But, we weren't forced to work. My dad, I remember my dad coming down and saying, hey, I'd like you to work with me in the business. And like I said, I was 10 years old, and, we started at the very bottom. And, there were times when you were younger, especially when you're teenage years, you didn't like what you were doing. Of course, it was hard work, and you didn't get paid very much. But as you mature and get older, I think it does two things for you. One, you learn the entire business of the company. I mean, we were sweeping floors and cleaning bathrooms, and just kind of moved into every aspect of the business. So it really gives you an appreciation for what others do in the company, and then it really helps you to learn every aspect of the business. And when you're younger, you don't really notice that, but when you get older, you're like, yeah, dad was a pretty smart guy, and we do appreciate what we have, and we've learned everything about the business. And it really helped as we got older and we were running the company ourselves.
Yeah, that's really incredible. Did you think, looking back now, did you think at that time when you were growing as a young man with the company that you would be here this long and that legacy would still be, would sustain? Or did you have other career aspirations of something else that, like, I don't want to stay in the family business?
That's a good question. Excuse me. There was a time when I, wanted to do other things, but it just didn't work out that way. And I just always managed to stay with the company. And as I got a little bit older, there were a lot of things that I enjoyed doing. Traveling was one of them for the company. And then I went into sales and sales management and those type of things. And I really enjoyed sales, working with people, helping them solve their problems, meeting new people, and traveling to
Mhm.
different places. And I really enjoyed that. It was very rewarding to help people to be safe with our products and to be more productive, and and then again, the personalities. I mean, I'm still friends, very dear friends with a lot of individuals that I worked with, and were customers, and we're friends for life, and
Mhm.
those relationships are really rewarding.
Yeah, that's one thing that I have always, over the course of my life, is the power of relationships. And as I get older, and then I meet new people like yourself and hear the stories and the impact of the legacies that they've been able to um, reach out to other people. I think sometimes people forget the power of those relationships, right? We take them for granted, maybe whether it's consciously or unconsciously. And I think bringing that to the forefront and you saying that, I mean, how many years later, that's really powerful. And I know that, we're all in this together. So I think that that's a wonderful ability to be able to have that ability to impact people's lives. And with that being said, can you now share a little bit about the Little Giant, how it started, and your father, and whatever you feel, on your heart, because it is
Mhm.
a compelling story and it's an amazing story. So I want everyone
Yeah,
to
my
hear.
dad, excuse me, my dad, grew up in Little Springville, Utah, and sorry, I got a little scratch in my throat. But my dad grew up with nothing. I mean, his family was pretty poor, and I think that's one of the things that's really great about this story, and that's going to be good about this book is my dad grew up, pretty poor. His father worked on for the railroad, and on the side, my grandfather. Uh, managed to farm 11 acres, which is a pretty good piece of land. And so I don't know how my grandpa did all this. I mean, he obviously woke up real early in the morning and worked really late to the night. But so my dad grew up, pretty much like anybody else. He didn't have a silver spoon in his mouth, but he was very ambitious, and he learned how to work hard from his father. He saw his father, and his dad had a great work ethic. And his mom taught him that he could do anything he wanted to, as long as he, gave it everything he had. And so with those two things, he really had a drive. I mean, he would disappear when he was little. He would run away, and my grandma would find him over at the neighbor's house or down the street. And he was just on the go all the time. So she had this ingenious idea of tying his belt loop to the clothesline outside, and came back about 20 minutes later, and the pants were still there and my dad was gone. And so he, even from a small, young age, my dad was very ambitious, and had this amazing drive and desire to just explore and achieve. And so, my dad was, one of the things that is amazing too about the story is my uncle died, and my dad and mom adopted our three cousins. And so my parents were 26 years old, and they had 7 kids. And
Wow.
from like 8 years old down to a newborn. And it was like one after the other, right? I think it was 9, maybe 9. And so you had like, you had all these little kids. And so my dad had, 7 kids, and my mom as a responsibility. And he was working. He never graduated from college. He just had a high school education. He was selling life insurance, and came across the idea of this little giant ladder, which was it wasn't called that then, but he really loved the ladder. He kind of fell in love with it, and he went home and told my mom, "I'm going to sell ladders." And she's like, "Well, how much money are we going to make?" And he goes, "Not very much." And but you got to give it to my mom. She really had belief and faith in my dad. And in the in the early days of the company, I mean, it was pretty scary. My dad had to sell so many ladders a day, and he couldn't go home at night until he was finished selling, the number, just to stay in business. And so there's a lot of cool stories about that. One of them was, my dad liked to share with people is that he had to sell one more ladder, and it was late at night, and it's 9:30 at night, and he's going door to door, house to house, trying to talk to people about ladders. And he runs into this, he's referred to this guy, and he goes to the guy's house, and the guy has one arm. And and so if you've ever seen like our infomercials, or the way that the little giant ladder worked, is you have these buttons you've got to push, you've got to pull out all these different pins and things to manipulate it, and you really need 2 arms. I mean, you need 2 hands. And so my dad's at this guy's house, and the guy says, "Well, if you can show me that as a one-armed man I can I can actually use this ladder, I'll buy it from you." And so my dad has this funny story of, he's got the ladder on the ground. He goes, "Me and this guy are on the ground." He said we were actually wrestling with a ladder, right? He goes, "We were using our elbows, we were using our legs, we were using our chins." And he said, "I'm down there showing this guy, hey, you can do this. I've got one arm behind my back, trying to show him he can manipulate it." And he goes, "I convinced the guy, and I sold him the ladder, and I could go home that night."
It's incredible.
My dad was a great salesperson. If you could sell, that ladder to a guy that only had one arm. So, he just had this drive and determination, and he didn't quit. And so, throughout, the time that we were in business, there was a lot of ups and downs, highs and lows. But, my dad always said that, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So, I think a lot of people nowadays in business, we live in this society now where these young kids, they want everything so fast. They get out of college,
Right.
they want a house, they want to make, 6 figures. They want to have the boat, the car, the everything.
Right.
And sometimes I think that, we need to learn that, things take time. And when you're building something, you gotta just hang in there and really put in the time, and it'll work out most of the time, Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Did when your dad would tell you some of these stories to come back, what were you thinking as a young man? Was you thinking, okay, I'm going to take it by the bootstraps? Or, I mean, what were some of your thought processes seeing such a massive impact, from business and just that drive and determination? Where was there any time where you felt like, for lack of a better word, insecure or not being able to live up to that expectation of something so powerful that your father had created as a young man?
Well, I think that's a good question, a really good question, because I didn't ever looked at my dad like I was in competition with him. I kind of looked at him more as a mentor and a role model. But yeah, you have to be careful that I mean, he had big shoes, to fill, obviously, and man, there's no way I could, I'm not my dad. I'm my own person, obviously. But
Sure.
growing up, my dad was amazing because, like, when growing up, he would run like these ultra marathons and stuff. We lived in Europe for a while, and my dad was super competitive. So everything he did, I mean, we grew up riding and racing dirt bikes, and my dad was like, he started riding dirt bikes when he was like 30, 38 years old, something like that, 40, and people laughed at him, because he didn't know what he was doing. He crashed his brains out, but he just had this drive. He was like, I'm gonna beat these guys. And after a couple of years, he was like, even though these guys were younger than him and had more experience, he was beating all these guys, just because he had sheer determination. And I think that was one thing I learned from my dad was, man, you don't quit, and he
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't quit no matter what he was doing, whether it was sports or whether it was, church stuff or just community, helping people, serving, or business. He was like all in. I mean, the guy was all in, and he did it 110%. And it was a lot of fun to be around him. I mean, there was a couple times he, knocked himself out, water skiing so fast, or dirt bike riding. He was like really adventurous. So
Wasn't there a story that you had mentioned about he was on a dirt bike and he was in a suit and he hurt his eye or something?
yeah, he
Can
was
you share that story?
Yeah, he was doing the local, I think it was a local CBS station in Utah, was doing an article on camera of Little Giant. They did the tour of the factory, and he was, talking, and they were following him with the cameras, and then they interviewed him in his office, and they're like, "Hey, we understand you like speed and everything." And he's like, "Yeah, I love it." And they're like, "You ride dirt bikes?" And so he's like, "Yeah, I got a dirt bike here." So they go out there, and my dad jumps on his dirt bike. He kept him there in the factory. Keep in mind, he's wearing a business suit. He's got first design sunglasses, these metal framed sunglasses, and no helmet on. And outside of our building, we owned this huge field for further expansion, but we were using it as a driving range. We actually built this driving range, and so my dad was out there on his dirt bike, and he's jumping like they were kind of the holes we had them elevated, right? And so he was jumping over these with his dirt bike in his suit, right, and wearing leather shoes, and they're filming this, and one of the guys that worked there had watered one of the areas really heavy, and my dad goes up, and he's got these steel sunglasses on, wire rim sunglasses, and he just crashes. I mean, he goes and just slides out, and he's got mud all over him, and wipes out. And he's mic'd up and everything. He's got a mic on, a pack, and everything.
Wow.
And so, he gets up, he's like, "Oh, that was cool," and everything. I mean, we've got this tape, but anyway, when he crashed, his sunglasses like went up into his forehead and just peeled his scalp back. So he couldn't find his glasses because they were clear up in his hair. And anyway, so he figures it out and pulls him back down. And anyway, right here, you have an artery right here, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
His blood, every time his heart would pump, it'd go, it'd spurt out blood. So he pulls back up, and these guys, the cameraman and the reporter, are like, they're like ready to pass out because they're like, "Oh, Mr. Wing, like blood squirting out of your head, And he's like, "Yeah, wasn't that cool and everything?" And they're like, "You need to go to the doctor, you need stitches and everything." I mean, he's mud and blood on this really nice suit, Anyway, so he ended up going over to the hospital, and luckily that day they had a plastic surgeon there that put all his face back together.
Gosh.
But they had to edit that out because it was so gory, right?
Wow.
And they did the story on him, but they gave us the master tape on that, and I still have it somewhere, but I couldn't watch it because I get really
You're too squeamish.
lightheaded. But when they gave that to my dad later, a bunch of the guys watched it, and they were like, "Oh, you could hear him and everything," and it was pretty wild. But yeah, he was really into speed and all that. But again, whatever he did full bore. Just
Hmm.
man, he overdid it, like, on a lot of things, but
Yeah.
it made him successful. It really did. But
Yeah.
his body paid the price. He passed away when he was only 72, but everybody said, man, he had 9 lives and he used them all up. I mean, but he lived his life his way and he enjoyed it.
Right.
Yeah.
I just think, when you think about a legacy, whether it's in business or your personal life or whatever, when you really think about the blessing that is to have that type of exposure and to
Mhm.
be able to share these types of stories and remember these types of stories. um, One of the other things that I know is a legacy of your father that you mentioned as the business grew, that he knew every employee's name. Can you share that? Because who does that? I mean, I'm not saying that it's not out there, but
Yeah.
I think it's a lost art with building relationships and creating a true lasting legacy in business, where 40 years later, like you had mentioned earlier, you still have lifelong relationships with those people. So
Mhm.
share some of your dad's legacy when it comes to just being there for people and impacting them on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, he was pretty incredible. I mean, most business owners, and I'm not saying all of them, but a
Mhm.
lot of business owners come through the front door, and I think they know a lot of the people who are working for them. But my dad would actually walk through the back door, and he would just go back and start talking to the welders and the people who were running presses and boxing ladders, and he knew everybody by name. And not only that, he knew something about them. He knew about the people that were struggling, and he'd call them into his office and check on them. And so he just had this ability to connect with people, unlike
Mhm.
hardly anybody I've ever seen before. He would walk into the lunchroom if we had a meeting or something, and people would stand and clap for him. I mean,
Wow.
he just had so much respect, from his employees. They knew that they knew that he loved them and cared about them. I interviewed, as I'm doing this
Wow,
book.
that makes me want to cry.
Yeah, as I interview
Powerful.
people for this book, and a lot of them are former employees or current employees. One of the retired employees said, "I knew your dad loved me so much," and he goes, "And because I knew that," he goes, "I worked so hard because I didn't want to disappoint him." And I thought,
Wow.
wow, how many people have you worked for, Patricia, that you could say that guy loved me, or that lady that
Right.
it was a
Yeah,
business.
I'm just, man, that it's
Yeah, I mean, y
it does.
probably nobody, right? You probably
No.
work most people you work for, you're going, "They don't care about me, I'm just another
Right.
number." And, so that was the kind of father I grew up with, is a guy that taught,
Yeah,
uh,
wow.
there's a sign on the building that says, "If you concentrate on building the business and not the man, you will not achieve. But if you build the man, you achieve both." And so that
Wow.
was that was our philosophy. My dad's philosophy growing up is, guess what? Treat these people like they should be treated, and they're going to carry you to the top of the mountain, time and time again. And so people loved working for my dad because he treated them so well, and we were the culture at Little Giant was one of like a family, and it was unbelievable. Yeah, he was great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so powerful because in this burn and churn life that we live in, even in business, to constantly just use people for what they're coming, yes, you're paying them for a skill to work, but it's more than that, because when you can look back and say that someone, I know that your dad loved me. I mean, because you think about love, what is love, right? And the meaning of love. You love your children, you love your spouse, right? You love your friends, you hopefully you love yourself. But when you think about the power of love and you go to work every day and you can say that about your employer.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, if you guys can't feel that, I mean, that just gives me, it makes like my heart is so full. Like it's it's something that I wish more people would embrace,
Hmm.
because you don't have to burn and churn to care about people and to leave that legacy, when everything is so stressful, and to be able to get up and go to work and say, hey, I'm going to Little Giant today because I can't wait to see the owner, that's that personable and connected to people, and that deep connection. I just, that's really just a beautiful legacy, Doug. I'm just, thank you for sharing that. Everyone needs to hear that and know that it not only has it existed, that legacy is continuing on even up to this very moment, and
Hmm.
they have the ability to do the same thing if they choose to. So it's a
Yeah, yeah, and,
great lesson.
if you look at, what's happening right now as we come out of COVID, there's so many businesses that are looking for people and trying to hire people, and people are just jumping around to different companies. They'll go somewhere for $1 more an hour, and so
Hmm.
I think my dad really taught my brother and I that, again, if you take care of people, they'll be loyal to you. They'll stay with you for a long time. And I'll give you an example of that. About a year ago, this administrative assistant was working for us, and somebody said, "Oh, she's leaving." And so I went up and talked to her, and I said, "Man, it's really sad to see you go. Are you sure you want to leave?" "Oh yeah, this company has offered me, more money and better this and benefits and that." And then it was really funny because about 6 months later, I'm walking through the office and she's back. This lady's back, and I said, "What happened?" And she goes, "Oh well," she goes, "They promised me all these things," and she just said, I wasn't happy there, and I just loved it here, and you guys
Wow.
treated me so well, and even though they were paying me more money, I just couldn't stand it. The culture, it wasn't what they said it was going to be." And she goes, "I was so glad that you guys took me back, that there was a position." And here she was back again. And so I thought, man, that's really a neat little feather, I guess, for Little Giant, is the way
Sure.
that we tried to treat people. That, here she left and was promised all this, and came back and just said, "Oh, I missed my job. I missed the people. I missed this place." And so it was a big compliment. And, it made me feel good that we were kind of carrying on the traditions that my father started.
Yeah. I was thinking, excuse me. I was thinking as you were talking, the company name is Little Giant.
Hmm.
However, you're you're a gentle giant. Your father was a gentle giant, a powerful giant, right? And so Little Giant, but a gentle giant, because they had the hearts of people at the core of who they were, and kept that as that baseline to continue throughout. And consistency is really key too, because some people or some businesses, they like, the new trend that's coming out. Let's go and let's try this, but just being consistent. No, treat people like you would want to be treated, know their names, and go that extra mile. That says a whole lot about the whole culture of Little Giant.
Yeah.
When it comes to competition, I know your dad was a little bit rad in his thought process too. You have a couple of I've heard you tell a couple of really good stories about competition with your father. Do you mind sharing a couple of those?
No, I don't. When the company was started, a lot of our competitors kind of laughed at us and said, you guys are so dumb. I mean, doing what you're doing, nobody's going to want this stuff." And even in the last few years, we developed a lightweight fiberglass ladder that was half the weight of the other ladders, but it was twice the price because it was a new proprietary material. And people were just like, "Nobody wants lightweight ladders." I'm like, "Why wouldn't people want lightweight ladders?" Right? We were listening to the customer. And because we developed this new lightweight technology, we were able to take over the entire cable TV market, which was, I mean,
Wow.
millions of dollars. And so what was funny about that was, in the beginning, all the other ladder companies, they were like, "You guys are so dumb. Nobody wants this." And we're like, "Okay." That's all we would say. We would just smile at them and say, "Okay, that's fine." Well, within a matter of a couple of years, we'd taken over all of the cable business. I mean, we're talking Comcast, Charters, Spectrum, all these big companies, and we just took it all over. And the biggest ladder company in the world, the CEO came up to me at a show and he goes, "Hey, you guys didn't just take some of the business." He goes, "You guys took it all." And I just looked at him and smiled, and he says to me, "We're going to get the business back." And I just said, "Oh, okay, good luck with that." But what the funny thing about it was, is they started producing lightweight ladders. Now they couldn't ever figure out, they couldn't get as light as ours. I mean, we were always 10 pounds lighter because they were trying to, I mean, they'd buy our ladders, they'd reverse engineer them, they'd do all this stuff. But what I learned from that was, really is, listen to your customers. And because we listened to our customers and they told us what they needed and wanted. And here's the irony about that. We took that business with a product that was double the price. And you say, wow, how did you do that? Well, the way we did that is we figured out that the heavy ladders were costing these companies millions and millions of dollars because technicians were hurting their shoulders, their backs. They had to have workman's comp issues, damage they would drop ladders and smash them into cars and people's houses and all this stuff. So the bottom line they were paying twice the amount of money for those ladders, but it was still saving the companies millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. And so it was a no-brainer. And that's how we did it. But it all started with listening to your customers, and then get them the things they want, get them the things they really need. And by listening and building what people wanted and needed, it really helped the company.
You would think that from a logical standpoint, that would be really simple to figure out. But unfortunately, some still, even today, Doug, people and companies still don't get that basic principle.
Yeah, I mean, if you go in to buy a car, most car salesmen are really pushy and they don't listen. And, I was pretty successful in sales, and I did it by not pushing at all. I mean, I listened, I developed relationships, I tried to help people solve problems, and it worked out well.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's great. That's really great. There was one story at a trade show that one of the guys was talking some smack to your dad?
Yeah, that was in the very beginning. The largest ladder company in the world, two brothers were the owners. And they came up to my dad and said, "You're an idiot. We could have had this ladder years ago. It's not going to sell. People don't want it. It's too expensive. You're going to fail." And my dad said, "Wow." He said that really lit a fire right here in his chest, right? He said, "I was determined that day, then and there, that I was going to prove these guys wrong, and that they were going to be, that I was going to be the last one laughing." And so, needless to say, over the years, these guys eventually got into the market. They saw what we were doing, and they came up with their own product. But throughout the years, the same company with these two brothers, they tried to buy our company like 3 or 4 times, and my dad would never sell to them. He would just say, "Nope, I'm not selling to you." And anyway, it was, and those two brothers, one of those brothers, one time I was at a show, and we had this one ladder in our booth, and he came up and he said, he said, "I'll deny it if you ever tell anybody this." But he said, "That ladder right there, your ladder," he goes, "those are in my closets at my house." And so, he had a house in Chicago and he had a house in West Palm Beach. And he said, they say Little Giant on them, but he said, "You guys have the best product." So it was pretty cool.
That's saying something, right? You have your competitor's product because it's better than what you got. That is incredible. At least he admitted it. So that
yeah, they admitted they were wrong. I mean, they admitted because they tried to sell, and when I was talking to this guy, he said, "Man," he said, "your dad proved us wrong, and they wanted to buy us, but he wouldn't sell." And it was a pretty good story. Yeah.
Yeah, that is great. So obviously your father has had a lasting impact on your life. So now, as a young man who is officially retired, What was the defining moment where you felt like you wanted to retire? Did you feel like you just wanted, there were more things you wanted to explore? What was that like as far as your process, your thought process, and just where you were and where you wanted to go? And
Yeah, that's a fair question, and a lot of people say, "Wow, you're pretty young." Still, I was very fortunate to be able to step away. After a long career. I mean, I started, like I said, I was 10 years old, and I flew 2 million miles on Delta, and I saw
wow.
a lot of the world, and spent a lot of time away from home, but it was good. I mean, I learned so many things, and I knew, I don't know, they say that when people are playing sports like professional athletes, they kind of know when it's their last year. And 2019, I got ready to go on a trip in January, and I'm going to the airport, and I had this thought: this is my last year doing this. This is it. And so I kind of knew it was
Mhm.
time. And so I decided I wanted to do other things, serve some church missions, and
Mhm.
um, maybe get involved in some other businesses. And so I made the decision this is going to be my last year. And at the end, it was hard. At the end of the year, we had a big party at Little Giant, and then we had a retirement party. And boy, there was a lot of people there, and everybody, a few people gave some little speeches, and I had to get up there, and it was emotional, because
I'm
you lose
sure.
people. Yeah, and it was my whole life, and you love the people, you love the
Mhm.
products, and you love the company, and but now I'm doing some other things, and as I when I stepped away from it, I thought, well, one thing I'd really like to do is write a book about my dad. And my dad passed away when he was only 72, and he had actually started a book about his life and had like 3 chapters done. And a good friend of mine, Jeffrey Gitomer, I had talked to him a couple times about this, and and he read the manuscript, and that my dad had, and he said,
Mhm.
this story really needs to be told, this incredible story.
Mhm.
And so with his kind of little prodding, he goes, you just can't play golf all day, you can't just sit around and do nothing. Well, I'm not going to do nothing. But so he kind of helped me, and he's kind of been uh, helping me along the way. Hey, there's Ken right there. And
Mhm.
so I think this is going to be a really good book for my dad's legacy, number one. But number two, this book is going to be very helpful for entrepreneurs, salespeople, business leaders, really to teach them these core principles and values of Hal Wing, and what kind of what I learned from him, and how he treated people, and the successes he had. And then I'd like to teach these things as well going forward after this. We have a plan to do a course on to teach other companies, how to integrate these policies and procedures and
Sure.
principles into their company as well.
Yeah, that's incredible, and I'm excited to read the book. So what are some of your hobbies? So now that you made that decision, what is it that Doug Wing likes to do? I know you love helping people. I know your faith is very important to you. I think you like fast cars. Kind of got that
Yeah, we got a
impression.
few things we do. I mean, I moved down to Phoenix where the weather's great, and I play a little golf. Right now it's a little hot, but here in the next little while it's going to be it'll be a lot cooler. But I play golf. I serve in my church.
Mhm.
I do enjoy cars. My dad was a big car nut. Man, he got up to like 60 cars, and
Wow.
they were all licensed and registered, and he drove them all. And he was just a big car nut. But boy, it was a big job to keep all those clean and everything. But I don't. Yeah, I've just got a few that I enjoy. But I mean, really, I'm enjoying what I'm doing right now. I have another company I'm involved in where we provide multifamily housing for people to live, and we do some property management, which is, it's been a good business.
Mhm.
And It's been totally different than manufacturing and ladders, but I'm learning more about those things, and it's been fun. I'm staying pretty busy. But yeah, my book is called Giant Success. It'll be coming out in the early spring of next year, and we're working very hard on it. And I'm excited. Jeffrey Gitomer's writing the forward to it.
Nice.
Yeah, he's written 17, 18 books, and he's
Yeah, that's
amazing.
awesome.
And we're working on the chapters right now and getting close to going to editing later this year. So yeah, it's a lot. I've got a lot going on, and I never thought I'd be this busy. I mean, I thought I'd be have little more time just to kind of relax, but it's good. I mean, you can't just sit around and do nothing. I don't think that's good either. So yeah.
No, excuse me. Pardon me. I don't think that just with your history, the legacy that your father has left, I don't even know that it's in your DNA to not be busy and do something, Doug. So, and I know your faith is really important to you as well. And you have went on several missions. Are you still doing mission trips, or what does that entail for you? Because that's powerful as well.
I would like to do some more of those. Now, when you're younger, like when I was 19, I went on a mission. Actually, in the Midwest, you're from Missouri, and I was in North and South Dakota, which in the wintertime is very different than Phoenix. It is like 50
yes.
So, but I do think that a big part of my another big part of my success, as far as working with people, came from going out at 19 and knocking on doors and talking to people about religion. Now, you get all kinds of different responses. You get some people that want to throw you off the porch and then bring your neck and all that stuff. But most of the people were kind and nice, and you learn a lot of. I learned that there's good people everywhere, no matter what religion you are.
I agree.
There's so many good people, and what's amazing is at 19 I went on this mission, and I am still friends. Talk to people weekly from that experience when in 1983. You think about how long ago that was.
Wow.
I still have dear friends from that I have met there, and obviously some of them are living in different states and things, but I had wonderful experiences and realized that there's so many good people everywhere. So it was good. And then the problem for me now is I am single, and to go on a mission later in life, you have to be married. So I am doing a little bit of dating, and I would like to get married again. But it's dating in your 50s is really interesting. And I think I could write another book about half the stories that I have from dating in your 50s. It's pretty interesting. And this now online dating is huge. I mean, there's all these different websites, and people are getting married like crazy and I'm like, man, this is just strange.
Yeah. I was just talking to a client a few days ago, and they were telling me that their uncle, who is 60, I think he's going to be 63, he's on one of the dating sites, and he's met a nice young woman, and they have been seeing each other, and it looks like it's going really well. So I would just encourage you just to keep doing it, because it seems like it's working for a lot of people.
Yeah. It's just, with technology nowadays, I mean, look at what we're doing right now with this podcast and the ability to have this technology to do what we're doing. And, I mean, people can FaceTime each other around the world. It's pretty incredible, the way that companies are doing business nowadays. And it's really changing the way that, things work. And so I think it's great what you're doing, starting your own little show here, and you're embracing technology, which is the way to, we have to.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, Doug, full disclosure, 100% transparency, I tend to stay in the lane that I'm good at. Tech's not one of them, but I am getting better.
Yeah, well, we're all like that. None of us like change, but that's how we grow, and become better, is by getting out of the comfort zone. So I think you're doing great. This is wonderful. We've actually gone over probably what you normally do.
Well, that's what I was gonna. I wanted you to finish everything, but I wanted to also be mindful of your time too. So I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come on this morning, because I know you're actually in Pacific Standard Time. But what my intention is, Doug, and is to bring good people to the world, let them hear incredible, powerful stories, and know that there's good in humanity out there. There's good people out there. And
Mm.
if you're open to it and you're looking for that joy. So I am just honored to have you on today. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for sharing that. I think that anyone that is going to go back and rewatch that is going to be, they will be inspired, because the power of love, the power of leaving a lasting legacy, and that legacy continuing on. And you're just an incredible person. So I am just happy to know you and look forward to having future conversations.
Sure. Yeah. I guess, my final message to people is, you can get everything you want to. This is a Zig Ziglar quote, and he says you can get anything you want to as long as you help enough other people get what they want. And so that's kind of been the philosophy, of my dad was, hey, build people, help people become better, and they're going to take you to a different level as well. And so that's kind of how I grew up, was help people, and by doing so you're going to be helped as well. So yeah, it's been great to be here, and look forward to seeing some of your other shows coming up.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I want to tell everyone happy Friday. Enjoy your day. And if you didn't take anything away, take away the fact that you can always be kind to people, even if it's just a smile. So hope you have a good day, a great weekend, and peace out. Thank you, guys.